You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and today I'm going to be previewing the 49ers offense and how they're going to be matching up with the Seahawks defense in week 2, happening in just a few short days here. Before I get into all of the different matchups, first I want to talk about the weather. You know, we've been hearing that there is a possibility of rain once again in this game in Santa Clara, and I just wanted to clear up what we know about the weather so far. It is still expected to rain, but as far as it seems, it looks like it's going to be more of like showers, very, very light rain, nothing like what we saw in Chicago. It's projected to rain now just 0.15 of an inch, which has dropped from 1/4 of an inch, which was, that's what it was looking like a day or two ago. Also, it seems like the worst of the rain will not be until after the start of the game. At first, it was showing that the worst of it was going to be right at the start. So this is a good sign. You know, it probably won't rain too much while the game is actually happening. So hopefully as Sunday gets closer, it moves to an even more favorable projection as far as the rain goes. Overall, I don't think the rain will have any impact on this game and how it is played. So I think for all of us, that is still a positive sign. Of course, for those of us who are going to be attending the game, you know, you might want to bring a jacket or so, but we'll just play that by ear. Now let's talk about some 49ers news. Some, injuries on both sides for both of these teams. George Kittle, he participated in practice today, which is, very great, right? He was a limited participant today after not having practiced any other day this week. And also last week when he was out, Kyle Shanahan said he looked awesome and he'll be a game time decision for Sunday. He was officially listed as questionable on the injury report, although Kyle Shanahan did say, again, game time decision. So it's going to come down to the wire for George Kittle. I know all of us are hoping that he's going to be able to suit up in this game. I think he was definitely missed in, week 1. And now with Elijah Mitchell being out, I think it just raises the stakes even higher, to have George Kittle out there. And so, him practicing today obviously keeps his chances of playing alive, and we're all just going to be crossing our fingers and hope that he's able to suit up. But altogether, great sign for the 49ers offense. And Daniel Brunskill, he's going to be out for the second week in a row, dealing with his injury still. And so, the 49ers offensive line is going to remain intact as it was in week 1. Let's talk about some Seahawks injuries. Okay, so cornerback Artie Burns and cornerback Justin Coleman, they are both questionable in this game. I would expect that they play. And safety Joey Blount is out. But as far as I know, Joey Blount is not a starter for the Seahawks, so that really has no bearing on this game too much. But the biggest thing, which, I think we all figured after we watched the Monday Night Football game, was that there's not going to be any Jamal Adams in this game for the Seahawks. He suffered a serious quad injury, and it'll be interesting to see if this injury has any bearing on the next 49ers Seahawks game, the second time they meet this year, because it seems like I saw that he might be out for the year, so I don't know if that's for good. But yeah, Jamal Adams definitely not playing in this game. And so just right off the bat, we could start talking about, the Seahawks secondary and what it's going to look like without Jamal Adams out there, and, what the 49ers receivers are going to be going up against in this game. So Seahawks safety Josh Jones, he is set to start in Jamal Adams' place. Jones had a 42.3 PFF overall defense grade, playing in place of Adams after he got hurt in week 1. Jones had 3 missed tackles. He was targeted 5 times and allowed 4 receptions. So obviously not as good as Jamal Adams. I know, we always make jokes about, Jamal Adams being overrated and things like that, and that's like a running joke. But to be honest, Jamal Adams is a good safety, and the Seahawks defense is definitely going to miss him, especially given what I just told you. Josh Jones, at least in week one, in having to play some snaps in Adams' place, wasn't very good. So, he's set to get the start, and I feel like that's a matchup that Kyle Shanahan and this offense could potentially exploit, among others. Quandre Diggs is the free safety for the Seahawks. In week 4 last season, he probably had his best game of the season. Not probably, he definitely did. He had his best game of the season versus the 49ers, in which he had an interception, a pass breakup, and 6 tackles. So the 49ers obviously hope that, Quandre Diggs doesn't have a repeat performance from that week 1 game last season. In week 13, Diggs wasn't quite as good. He missed a couple tackles. He was targeted once and didn't allow a reception. So still solid, but just not the same performance he had in week 4. So I would consider Diggs, to be a pretty good safety. And like I said, no Jamal Adams being out there definitely puts the Seahawks secondary back a little bit. Josh Jones not quite as good as Jamal Adams. But let's talk about these Seattle corners. So we have Michael Jackson. Yes, that's really his name. My cornerback, Michael Jackson, and Tariq Woolen on the outside, and they have Justin Coleman as the slot corner. Michael Jackson he was targeted 5 times. He allowed 2 receptions in week 1. Tariq Woolen, he's the rookie, the Seahawks 5th-round pick this year. And to me, in that game versus the Broncos, he looked like someone who the 49ers will want to pick on, right? Cue the Kyle Shanahan microscope meme where he's looking through the microscope as he studies, game tape. Woolen in week 1 was targeted 3 times. He didn't allow a reception, but he was penalized twice. And PFF gave him a 49.8 coverage grade. So him being a rookie, I think it would make sense for the 49ers to want to pick on him a little bit and just, see how he's going to be doing in that game right off the bat. I think we see plenty of Brandon Ayuk going against Woolen honestly. I think there's an opportunity for Ayuk to get loose in this game, and a chance for us to finally see that Trey Lance to Brandon Ayuk connection in a regular season game, right? We talked so much about that, throughout the offseason. We heard so much about how much work they'd gotten in together, and how they have great chemistry. I feel like in this game, this is an opportunity to really get that going for those two. And so hopefully, we see that. And I think, going up against Tariq Woolen is going to be an opportunity to do that for this 49ers offense. Now, as far as Deebo Samuel goes, he'll get some routes, as he mostly does, but I think he'll have a lot of carries in this game as well, just like he had in week 1. In week 1, he had 9 snaps out of the backfield out of 56 of his total snaps. And I would expect that number to grow in week 2, honestly, because, in week 1, Elijah Mitchell was out there for pretty much most of the second half. Most of the first half. And so those 9 snaps, I think, could definitely go up in week 2, given that, Elijah Mitchell is not going to be out there. So when Deebo Samuel, when he lines up on the outside, he does so on both sides of the field. He's not one of those receivers that, just runs from one side of the field. So he'll probably get a fair share of both Michael Jackson and Tariq Woolen. And he also had 10 snaps in the slot, Deebo did. So he'll see some Justin Coleman as well. And Ray McLeod and Jawan Jennings will probably see some Coleman too. And I think Ayuk, also gets a few snaps in the slot. So, Coleman will probably see a little bit of everyone. Justin Coleman, the Seahawks slot corner, he was in Miami last season. And in week 1 with the Seahawks, he allowed 59 yards on 6 receptions out of 8 targets. Not great. He had 4 total tackles and 2 missed tackles. So, Justin Coleman, potentially someone they could exploit, but I don't know. Maybe week 1 is an outlier. I feel like for guys when it's their first game on a new team, there's always that, time where it's kind of weird and wonky, and you're not quite gelled in with the rest of the group yet. So who knows? Maybe that's what it was for Justin Coleman in week 1, where, he looked a little shaky, and I would expect maybe he has a better game in week 2. But, like I said, with Brandon Ayuk, and all the receivers that they have, really, Samuel, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, maybe even we see Danny Gray in this game. I feel like there's an opportunity to get, Danny Gray a couple snaps and see what he can do, stretch the field, things like that. I feel pretty good about how the 49ers receivers would match up against the Seahawks secondary, from everything that I've seen. What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for the comments. Yeah, Zach Greer over here says Jamal Adams is a great blitzer. Yeah, he definitely is. That's really the strength to his game, more than anything else. And so the Seahawks are definitely going to miss him from that aspect, being able to, get after the quarterback. And, kind of similar to Hufanga in a way where, in the box, he's definitely a threat. Jamal Adams is. So, they'll definitely be missing him, but the 49ers, I think that's a great opportunity for Trey Lance to have somewhat of a cleaner pocket. And so we'll take that any day. And Zach also says Michael Jackson is going to be a smooth criminal to deal with. I hate you, Zach. But great name. Don't they also have I think they also have a corner named Cody Bryant, right? But it's spelled with a C. He didn't get a lot of snaps in week 1 though. So, I don't think the 49ers receivers will see much of him, but man, that's awesome. Michael Jackson and Kobe Bryant on the same team. Like, who would have thought? That's like a dream team right there. But anyway, make sure you guys are subscribed if you are not, and make sure you like this video if you haven't yet. I'm going to be doing these preview videos every week, both from the offense and defensive perspective. So make sure you get those likes up. Come on, everyone. Let's try to get to, 30, 35 likes, maybe 40. Go ahead and like this video if you have not yet. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's talk about the Seahawks linebackers really quick. So let's start with Cody Barton. He didn't play in both matchups versus the 49ers in week 4 or week 13 last season. But in week 1, the PFF graded him terribly in run defense. He had a 26.9 run defense grade. Cody Barton did in week 1. He had 8 total tackles, 71.8 pass rush grade with his 1 sack, and 56.2 in coverage. That was his grade, his coverage grade, 56.2. He allowed 80 yards on 9 receptions on 10 targets. So he allowed a reception 9 out of the 10 times he was targeted and allowed 80 yards. And, like I mentioned, the Broncos, just like the Seahawks, like to get their tight ends involved. And so we saw a lot of completions for Russell Wilson and his, Broncos tight ends. And so Cody Barton, on the other end of that, allowed a lot of receptions there. So to me, he would be a liability versus the 49ers tight ends, I think, particularly George Kittle, if he's available for this game, which, we hope that he is. I could see Kyle Shanahan having Barton as well under a microscope as he watches that week 1 film, and as someone that he can definitely, kind of take advantage of in terms of like different matchups and things like that. So George Kittle, hopefully he's available for this game. I could see Cody Barton having a hard time, covering Kittle. The other linebacker is Jordan Brooks. He played better than Barton in week 1. He had 10 total tackles, still had 2 missed tackles, and he allowed 3 receptions on 3 targets, but for only 30 yards. So, not terrible for Brooks. And back in week 4 versus the 49ers, he had a sack as well. So, as far as the 49ers tight end goes, like I said, if Kittle plays, he'll see the bulk of the snaps at tight end, and we'll feel pretty good about that, right? But if he doesn't play, Tyler Croft probably gets the start again. as he started in week 1. He played 37 total snaps in week 1, Tyler Croft did. And then followed by Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelley, who had 19 snaps apiece. They both had 19 snaps in week 1. Charlie Warner was involved more as a blocker than a receiver, really, which was a little surprising to me. But yeah, I mean, that's what the 49ers decided to do. Tyler Croft, not involved at all in pass blocking and really more involved as, the receiving tight end in week 1. So, like I said, if George Kittle is out there, he's going to be the main guy when we don't have to worry about much. But if he's not out there, it's really going to be a team effort and tight end by committee in a way, where they'll get all of those guys involved: Croft, Charlie Warner, and Ross Dwelley. But it will mostly be Tyler Croft. But like I said, I'm really hoping that George Kittle can play in this game. And we'll just have to wait and see, right? Let's talk about the 49ers running backs and how they'll match up with the linebackers and the Seahawks defensive line. Because I know there's a lot of questions about the 49ers running backs right now, right? No Elijah Mitchell. He's going to miss, the first half of the season at least. And so Jeff Wilson Jr. he's the next man up, right? I mean, in week 1, after Mitchell went out, Wilson went on to have 9 carries for 22 yards. Good for a 2.4 yard per carry average. Not great, right? But, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think it was more so the conditions they were playing in more than anything. At least that's what I hope for Jeff Wilson Jr. And I also, I mentioned this as well for Wilson, that I don't consider him to be a bell cow. He does have that experience before, like when Mitchell got hurt, but ever since he's come back from his injury, it doesn't seem like he is quite there yet where he can, get you those quality carries like he used to. So 9 carries for 22 yards in week 1 for Jeff Wilson Jr., 2 receptions for 8 yards. The 49ers obviously need a better game from Wilson in week 2, and I think they could get it, right? Like I said, there's better conditions. It's not being played in the monsoon. The bigger question mark is who is going to get the bulk of the snaps after Jeff Wilson Jr., because I expect that we see some of the other running backs involved as well. Like I said, Wilson is by no means a bell cow, so the 49ers, I think, would be smart to have some of the other running backs involved. The issue there is that 2 of these are rookies in Tyrion Davis-Price and Jordan Mason, and the other one is Marlon Mack, who is a newcomer, right? They literally just signed him earlier this week. So, but like I said, I would expect it to be a committee with, Wilson being the starter, but TDP, Jordan Mason, and Marlon Mack, maybe forming some type of committee. I wouldn't even be surprised to see all 4 running backs active for this game. Marlon Mack was signed to the practice squad, but he can be elevated to play in the game on Sunday. So I feel like the team is going to want to see, who earns those extra opportunities, right? Probably follow the hot hand a little bit, and also probably, whoever from, TDP, Mason, and Mack, who maybe looked good as a pass protector as well as a pass catcher this week in practice, potentially one of those guys has a good shot to earn more opportunities if they're able to do those things well. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if we see all 4 active. I also wouldn't be surprised for this to be a somewhat messy and confusing backfield in week 2 while, a hot hand emerges, right? Maybe it doesn't even happen in week 2. It could be a weird game for the run game. And like Double B Studio says, probably Debo. Debo absolutely is going to get, a lot of carries in this game. And like I said, he had 9 snaps out of the backfield, in week 1. And I would expect that number increases in week 2. So he absolutely is going to get more opportunities, as a wide back in this game, as we can expect, as well as Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance could get you some carries as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But yeah, definitely Marlon Mack is someone who could potentially suit up. I mean, if Marlon Mack suits up, I think it'll be because all 4 running backs are going to be active in this game, but we'll just have to wait and see what the 49ers game plan is, at running back. I would personally like it if they just, kept all 4 active, again, because Jeff Wilson Jr. is also susceptible to, injuries. So, I rather just have all 4 of those guys active in this game, but we'll see how it shakes out. Thank you so much, Des. Yeah, he says, hey, everyone, tell your friends to subscribe to 49K to grow the channel. I appreciate that, Des. And yeah, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do that. Please like this video. And let's see. Des says, do you think Gray will be active this week? Maybe get a few snaps or targets. Yeah, I think he will be active this week. I know that in week 1 they had what's the other wide receiver's name who they brought up from practice squad? Oh my god, my mind is drawing a blank, but it was he had some Malik Turner. Malik Turner was active in week 1 as the another wide receiver because he can bring them, quality snaps as well as special teamer. So I think that's why they made that decision to have him active. But, given the fact that, I don't think the rain is going to be an issue in this game. I mean, yeah, they should definitely have Danny Gray active for this one. And I would think that they would look to take a few more shots downfield in this game, and Danny Gray is going to be that guy who's going to be able to do that for you more so than anyone else. Double B Studio says, I think Debo might get 6 to 8 runs. Yeah, I think that's definitely in the range that we can see him getting in this game. Though the one thing I'm somewhat worried about is that, when defenses see Debo in the backfield, they kind of expect it now. And they know that since Elijah Mitchell is out, that, I think every team is going to assume that the 49ers are going to want to get Deebo Samuel involved more as a running back, right? So they see him in the backfield. They're going to key in on Deebo Samuel. What I would like the 49ers to do, instead of giving him the ball every time when he's in the backfield, they can try different wrinkles, kind of like the triple option that they ran in week 1. Maybe run some counters, So that's my fear. It kind of seemed on a couple plays that the Bears did a good job of keying in on Deebo Samuel when he was playing that wide back role. And so that's what you don't want. You don't want defenses to, you don't want to tip off the defense when you have Deebo in the backfield and then, your plays don't work. So I would like Kyle Shanahan to continue to get creative with the run game and open up opportunities maybe for other guys while showing Deebo in the backfield maybe. So we'll see. Double B Studio says Gray should be active. He could be that deep ball threat to take advantage of the Sea Chickens cornerbacks. Yeah, absolutely. I think we will see Gray active in this game. And yeah, like you said, Double B, I think he will be active in this game. So we'll just have to hope and see. Double B Studio also asks, how much George Kittle do we get in the offense, you think? Well, if he's active, I don't think there will be any limitations to George Kittle if he is active. Maybe just a slight bit, but I would assume that if he plays, it's because he is healthy enough to play. And if he's healthy enough to play, I mean, you should play him as much as you can, right? So I don't think if he's active, there won't be many limitations for George Kittle, and he's going to have the role that he usually does in this offense. So we talked about the running backs for the 49ers. Let's talk about the 49ers offensive line and how they're going to be matching up against the Seahawks defensive line. I'm going to start with Seahawks outside linebacker, Uchenna Nuosu. He was playing on the edge for the Seahawks, former Chargers player. He had a really strong game for them in week 1, 3 tackles, 4 assists, and a sack. He was named NFC Defensive Player of the Week. He was by far their best pass rusher in week 1. On top of his sack, he also had 1 hit and 3 hurries, and he was the only Seahawks pass rusher with double-digit rushes and a PFF pass rush grade above 90. The good thing for the 49ers in this is that, Nuosu is going to be seeing Trent Williams. Williams, he's coming off a less than stellar game by his standards, right? It was still a really good game from Trent Williams, but we just expect so much more. He allowed 3 hurries and 3 pressures in week 1. Like I said, kind of odd for Trent Williams. We're not used to seeing him allowing that much, but altogether it was still a serviceable game from Trent. But obviously, you want him to have a better game in week 2. It'll be important for him to have a better game, and definitely, gonna want Trent to neutralize Nuosu off the edge and keep Trey Lance's pocket clean in this game. The other edge for the Seahawks is Daryl Taylor, who will be working primarily against Mike McGlinchey. McGlinchey in week 1, he gave up 1 sack. I know everyone, sacks are hard to ignore, right? It ends a play, it gets your quarterback. Everyone notices when you give up a sack, but no one notices everything else that McGlinchey does. So fans often pummel all the hate on McGlinchey. He had a sack, a hurry, and gave up 2 pressures. But honestly, his week 1 performance was pretty much on par with his pre-injury self, which is actually a positive, I think, that we can take from Mike McGlinchey. We got to remember how serious his injury was, and all the different reports and about McGlinchey, like he might not be the same player, things like that. And so I think, week 1 being similar, honestly, to some of his past performances, I think that should actually make us feel, good that he's going to be able to give us the same type of McGlinchey he's always given us, whether you guys like it or not. So, like I said, he's going to be going up against Daryl Taylor in this game. And so, obviously, going to be a tough matchup for him, but also I feel like every matchup against, a good pass rusher is going to be a bit of a challenge for McGlinchey. And McGlinchey is better as a run blocker than a pass blocker. So always remember that. You don't notice him when he's run blocking, but hopefully he can have a cleaner game as a pass blocker in week 2 going up against Daryl Taylor. Let's talk about the interior of the 49ers line, though, and who they'll be facing. Yeah, Des here says, I think the O-line will be fine if right tackle holds up in pass pro. Yeah. Mike McGlinchey, I think he hopefully can, keep Trey Lance upright most of this game. But also the interior, right? The interior has always been, throughout the offseason, a question mark for this team. I honestly didn't think they did that bad in week 1, especially Spencer Burford, who will see some Quentin Jefferson in this game. Burford, as we know, he had an excellent first game in week 1, all things considered. He had a clean sheet, didn't give up any pressures, 87.8 pass block grade. Seahawks Quentin Jefferson, who he'll be, teeing up against, he had 5 pressures, 5 hurries in week 1 against the Broncos. So, this week 2 matchup might be a bigger challenge for Burford, but, personally, I feel pretty good that he'll be able to hold up pretty well. I think the future's really bright for Burford, and he might have, he might make some rookie mistakes still, but overall, I think we should all feel really good about how he's been looking so far. And so I feel good about him being able to have another good game. Now, Aaron Banks, on the other hand, playing right guard, he'll see a lot of Shelby Harris, and he'll also probably see a little bit of Quentin Jefferson as well. Aaron Banks, he didn't play as bad in week 1 as I think we had originally thought when we watched the game. But when you look at the entirety of the 49ers offensive line, I think it's safe to say that Banks is still the weakest link, like in comparison to the other guys on the offensive line, right? I mean, he could still be serviceable. He can still be solid, but out of all the guys, he's still the weak link, still has some improving to do. Shelby Harris, I think, is going to be a challenge for Aaron Banks in week 2. Banks allowed 2 pressures and 2 hurries in week 1. But he did grade out better as an offensive lineman than Shelby Harris graded out as a defensive lineman in week 1. So I don't know. Make of that what you will. Hopefully Aaron Banks could hold up against Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson in this game. As I've been saying, like throughout the off season, training camp, the preseason, all of that, I feel like offensive line continuity is important, and the more snaps that they get together as an entire unit, the better they're going to look over some time, right? So week 1, we had some question marks there. We didn't feel all too comfortable about it. I feel like week 2, there's an opportunity for them to have a better game together as a unit, and they'll continue to improve the more snaps that they get together. So I think that's a positive that we can draw from this offensive line. Jake Brendell at center, he'll see a combination of Harris, Quentin Jefferson, as well as Poona Ford. Poona Ford had an overall 45.5 grade in week 1 for the Seahawks. He had 1 pressure, 1 hurry, 1 tackle, and 1 missed tackle. Though Poona Ford didn't play as many snaps as some of the other guys that I have mentioned before. So the 1 tackle, he didn't play all of the snaps. Week 2 could just be an outlier for Poona Ford, though, as he did put together some better games versus the 49ers last season. And Brendell in week 1 versus the Bears gave up 2 hurries and 2 pressures. Although I think we also have to consider the fact that, in week 1, again, in those rainy conditions, those monsoon conditions, probably wasn't the easiest for the offensive linemen to, gain leverage and things like that. So I would expect a better showing from the offensive line in week 2. And I know, we all hope for that because it's going to be important for, Trey Lance to have a clean pocket. We know how much of a difference it makes when, Trey has time to, not just time to throw, but when he's comfortable in the pocket and he doesn't have to move around so much. Joey says Mitch 4-year extension. Mitch Wishnowsky? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about Trubisky? I would think you guys are talking about Wishnowsky. That would be some news. Yeah. A 4-year extension for your punter. Priorities. I'm not mad at it. I mean, he looked good in week 1 for the most part, but that's crazy. Double B Studio says, I think we will get a better assessment of the team this week. How many sacks do the Niners get? Yesterday on the show, we did a 49ers defensive preview against the Seahawks, and one of the viewers left a comment and said he thinks that Nick Bosa could get 2 sacks in this game. I feel like that's pretty reasonable. He had the 1 sack in week 1. He's going for that 20-piece, man. So he's going to try to get more sacks in this game. I'm sure he's not happy with just having 1 sack in week 1. But, what can you do? It was more so a matter of the, weather, right? So I think it's possible that we see Nick Bosa get 2 sacks in this game. That would be my prediction as well. But yeah, definitely there's an opportunity for sacks. Although I will say that, you guys can watch the defensive preview that I put out just last night. But I pretty much just said that, Geno Smith can escape the pocket pretty well as well. So I think that'll be the challenge, just containing him in the pocket. And I think that'll give way to being able to get, some sacks for the defensive line. Des says, I think Burford and Banks both did better than expected so far. Yeah, I would say so. And I think the more snaps that they get, the better they're going to get over time, right? And, Banks wasn't as bad as I originally thought when I watched the game live. I watched it back again, and I thought Banks actually did okay. So, definitely I would continue to keep this offensive line as it is. And like I said, the more snaps that they get together as a unit, they're going to just continue to improve over the course of the season. So week 2, another opportunity to improve for this offensive line. And we just need to stop with this narrative that, the offensive line is absolutely terrible. It actually is serviceable. Okay. Trey Lance, I feel overall good about this matchup for Trey Lance. The rain shouldn't limit what he's able to do. Um, it shouldn't limit him or the offense. I still expect the 49ers to run the football, as they always do. But I also think we see Lance take more shots downfield. Now, this is where the Danny Gray discussion, comes into play, right? Like maybe we see Danny Gray on a go route or something. But I would expect that, since they weren't able to do that in week one, there's opportunity to get Danny Gray involved in this game. And with Elijah Mitchell out, I would expect that the 49ers continue to involve Lance as a runner, as I mentioned earlier as well. Maybe we see the triple option again. Maybe we see some new wrinkles again, with the weather not being a factor. I would expect Trey Lance to, open things up a little bit in this game. And when Lance was able to throw in week one, I think we saw some positives from him, right? I expect that we see more of the same, with obviously more opportunities and with some slight improvements to the short area throws over time. I feel like for Trey Lance, that's been the biggest struggle for him so far to be consistent with is those short throws. One thing that, Jimmy Garoppolo and this offense really thrived on, to get the ball moving and to sustain drives. So, hopefully he can be more consistent in that area. And I think we'll just see him improve on that over time. I don't know how long it's going to take for him to be, perfect on those every time. But, I think that's the one thing we want to continue to see improvements on. But like I said, I think that this Seahawks defense, there's going to be some opportunities to exploit a couple of these matchups. So it'll be important for Lance to capitalize on those opportunities and make plays when they present themselves. Overall, I feel like this can be, a get right game for the 49ers and for this offense, as long as the 49ers defense can uphold their end of the bargain for a full 4 quarters, right? They started off week one very strong. The defense did, but all the penalties and things like that kind of derailed, the game, as well as the weather, right? Like obviously the weather did play into what the offense was able to do, but it started sputtering on defense with not being able to get off the field. So as long as the defense, can do their part, I think this is going to be a fine game for the 49ers offense. And I think we'll see a little bit more out of this. It kind of sucks that, we've been so excited to see Trey Lance and we want to see what he can do. And then week one was the kind of game that we got, right? Like we just have to throw away that entire game because there wasn't really much that you can judge from either quarterback from that game. So week two, hopefully, is a better opportunity to see, what we have in Trey Lance. And I definitely think it's going to be a better game for him and this 49ers offense altogether. And, I wouldn't call it a must-win game, but it's a must-win game from an optics standpoint, more so than anything else. If you start 0-2, I wouldn't say your season is over, but you can't start 0-2 at the same time, right? Like they definitely need to win this game. And Trey Lance, needs to shut some of the haters up, some of the narratives that are out there about him, especially after that video, about him leaked. Definitely want him to go out there and have a strong game. So hopefully, Kyle Shanahan has something good up his sleeve to try on the Seahawks, because, Pete Carroll and this defense, they've had the 49ers number, right? So they're going to try to, stop them in their tracks as well. So overall, though, I think this is going to be a better game for the offense. And I think the 49ers will come out and win it. And Sai says here, it's the Seahawks. It's a must win. Absolutely. I mean, any division game, any NFC West game is a must win, especially because the Seahawks were the only team to win in week 1 out of the NFC West. So they are squarely in first place in the NFC West after 1 week. So yeah, it is important to beat the Seahawks and, keep things close, right? Throughout this season. Because it doesn't look like the Seahawks are a team that are they're just gonna lay down and tank their season. I thought they actually looked pretty good in week 1 versus the Broncos. And Joey says Trey throwing dimes and dollars. I like that. Yeah, Lance will make them dance. And Milano says, but is that actually Lance in the video? That video was blurry as fuck. Any confirmation? I don't know. I know some people say it doesn't look like Trey Lance, and I don't know. Like to me, it looked like him, but I also don't know. Some people said it didn't look like it was Trey Lance because it doesn't look as tall as him. He looked shorter. But I don't know. To me, it looked like him, but I don't think we know for sure unless Trey Lance actually came out and confirmed that it was or wasn't him, which I don't expect him to do, So I think it'll just be a mystery. But as far as the media knows, it was him, right? And so they're already running away with this story, which is pretty ridiculous. It's like, let the guy have some fun. He's only 22 years old. And I highly doubt that happened anytime during week 1 of the regular season, right? Like that probably happened either way before or sometime in the off season. But anyway, yeah, I'm not going to give that video too much attention. I'm not worried about it, honestly. And, I think the 49ers are going to be able to bounce back in week 2, like I said. And yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a preview with my brother. He's going to be on the podcast again. We're going to be recording live from his man cave tomorrow night. So be on the lookout for that. But for you guys who are watching, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. I appreciate all of the love, all the support. And make sure that, you guys have a good rest of your Friday. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. And if you guys are going to be at the game, I'll see you guys on Sunday. If you see me out there, say hi. And hopefully I'm the good luck charm that the 49ers need to squeak out that win in week 2, right? All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.